Sherlock Holmes and the Strange Mr. Angel. Sherlock Holmes looked down from his flat into the London street. "Ah, Watson. Somebody is coming here," he said. "Look, there, across the street." I went to the window and saw a large woman in a big hat. She looked up at us. "Is she coming?" I said. "Look, she isn't moving." "It's difficult for her," Holmes answered. "She wants help, but, she's coming now." The woman walked slowly across Baker Street to Holmes's front door. "She has a problem," Holmes said. "The problem?" "It's a man," Holmes said. "She doesn't understand him, so she wants my help." Some minutes later, Miss Mary Sutherland came into Holmes's room. She told us her name and sat down in a chair. Holmes looked at her carefully. "Is typing difficult when you have weak eyes?" he asked her. "It was when I started," she answered. "But now I don't have to look down at my fingers, and, oh, how did you know?" Holmes laughed. "I'm a detective," he said. "It's my job. This is my friend, Dr. Watson. Now, tell me, why do you want to see me?" "I want you to find somebody for me," Miss Sutherland said. "His name is Mr. Hosmer Angel. I'm not rich, but I can't pay you. I have £100 a year and the money from my typing. My father, Mr. Windibank, doesn't know that I'm here. He doesn't want help from you or from the police. He says that I have to forget Mr. Angel. But I can't do that." "Your father," Holmes said. "Your names are different." "I call him my father," she said. "It's strange, because he's only 5 years older than me. My mother married him a short time after my father died. He's nearly 15 years younger than her. He works for a wine company." "Where does your £100 a year come from?" Holmes asked. I looked at Holmes. Why is he interested in that? I thought. She wants to talk about Mr. Angel, not her money. "The money came from my Uncle Ned in New Zealand, after he died," Miss Sutherland said. "That's very interesting," Holmes said. "So you have £100 a year, and the money from your typing job. Where does the money go?" "I'm living at home, so I give my mother and father the £100, she answered. "Mr. Windibank gets it from my bank and gives it to my mother. I use the money from my typing work." "Thank you for telling me that," Holmes said. "Now tell us about you and Mr. Hosmer Angel." Miss Sutherland's face went red and she looked down at her hands. "I first met him at a dance," she said. "The dance?" "Yes. Every year before he died, my father had tickets for a dance. Now my mother gets the tickets. Mr. Windibank didn't want us to go to the dance. They're not very nice people," he said. "And you haven't got the right clothes." But then he went to France. "What did he do in France?" "He buys wine there," Miss Sutherland answered. "He often goes for 2 or 3 days. So my mother and I went to the dance." "Was Mr. Windibank angry when he heard about that?" Holmes asked. "No, He was very nice about it. He laughed and said, "You can't stop women when they really want to do something." "And you met Mr. Hosmer Angel at the dance?" "Yes, I met him that night," Miss Sutherland said. "When did you see him again?" "He came to the house the next day. After that, I went for walks with him. But then Father came back from France, and Hosmer couldn't come to the house." No, Father doesn't like it when I have visitors," Miss Sutherland said sadly. "What did Mr. Angel do next?" Holmes asked. "He wrote me a letter every day," Miss Sutherland answered. "Then, a week later, Father went to France again and Hosmer visited me." "Did Mr. Angel want to marry you?" "Oh, yes, Mr. Holmes," Miss Sutherland said. "When did he ask you?" "He asked me after that first walk. He worked in an office in Leadenhall Street and—" "Which office?" Holmes asked quickly. "I don't know." "Where did he live?" "In a room above the office," she answered. "I don't know the address. Only Leadenhall Street." "So where did you send your letters?" "To the Leadenhall Street post office," she told him. "Hosmer went there for them. They were a secret from the other men in the office." "Why?" Holmes asked. "He said, 'I don't want them to know about you. They'll laugh at me.' I said, 'I can't type the letters. Then they won't know about us.' But he didn't want me to type them." "Tell me about him," Holmes said. "He was a very quiet man, a kind man. He liked to walk with me in the evening when there were many people on the street." "And his clothes?" "He had nice clothes," she said. "He wore dark glasses because he had weak eyes. He spoke quietly, too." "What happened after Mr. Windbonk went back to France?" Holmes asked. "Mr. Hosmer Angel came to the house again," Miss Sutherland said. "He met my mother. Then one day he said, 'Strange things happen in this life. But I want to know that you will always love me.' He wanted to marry me on the Friday of that week." "What did your mother say?" "My mother was happy about that because she liked him, too," Miss Sutherland said. "I said, 'But aren't we going to ask Father?' She said, 'No, we can tell him later,' but I didn't want to do that. So I wrote to Father in Bordeaux." "Bordeaux?" "Yes. The company has its French office there. But the letter came back to me on the Friday morning. It was too late," Holmes said. "Yes. He left for England before it arrived." "What happened on that Friday?" "Hosmer came in a cab to our house," Miss Sutherland said. "The cab took Mother and me to the church, near King's Cross. Hosmer followed us in a different cab. Mother and I arrived at the church first. When the other cab arrived, we waited. But Hosmer didn't get out. There was nobody in the cab." "What happened to him?" "The cab driver said he got in. I saw him. That was last Friday, Mr. Holmes." "Where is Hosmer?" "Thank you," Holmes said. "Now forget about this man. Think about your future." "You're very kind, Mr. Holmes, but I can't do that," she said. "I'll always love Hosmer. I'll be there when he comes back. I'll wait for him." After she left, Sherlock Holmes sat quietly for some minutes. "An interesting young woman," he said. "The typing," I said. "How did you know?" "Her arms, above her hands," Holmes said. "There were red lines across them. The typist puts her arms on the front of her desk when she types. That leaves the line. There was also a line across her nose. She wears glasses for her weak eyes. Of course, these things aren't difficult, Watson." "They aren't difficult for you, Holmes," I said. "Now, read the advertisement," he said. "What does it say about Mr. Angel's clothes, hair and face?" I read some of it to him.